Welcome to WMNF's Tuesday Cafe. I'm Sean Kinane. Today we're going to talk about Hurricane Ian. It's a major hurricane with maximum sustained winds of 125 miles an hour. It has made landfall as a Category 3 hurricane in western Cuba, and now it's barreling toward the Tampa Bay area. The Tampa Bay region is under a hurricane warning and a storm surge warning. Evacuations of tens of thousands of residents have been ordered in nearly all of the Tampa Bay counties. So I hope you're safe out there, and I hope that you have tuned into WMNF to get some information. What do we need to know about Hurricane Ian? Joining us now to take answers to your questions is Florida Public Radio Emergency Network meteorologist Megan Borowski. Welcome to WMNF's Tuesday Cafe, Megan.
Thanks for having me, Sean.
I'm so glad you could join us. And so let's start with the big question. This doesn't seem like a run-of-the-mill Florida hurricane. This seems like something different, doesn't it?
Well, in terms of the fact that the models keep wobbling so darn much, usually by this point, about 24 to 36 hours before projected landfall, we typically are increasing confidence in where landfall will actually occur. But even overnight last night into this morning, the wide scale or the global models are wobbling, and the regional scale models are suggesting that maybe this thing is going to take a harder right-hand turn.
So what does that mean for the Tampa Bay area? Some of the models are saying that it was expected to go right up through Tampa Bay, but a harder right turn would essentially put landfall further south than the Sunshine Skyway Bridge in Tampa Bay.
Right. So again, this is not set in stone. This is just a few models showing maybe a right-hand turn closer to Sarasota, but the rain shield from Ian will still likely nail the Tampa Bay area. And so we're still looking at upwards of a foot, maybe even locally higher in terms of rainfall accumulation. So flooding will still be a threat. And then, of course, depending on the geography, the microgeography of the coastline, we'll still be dealing with an influx of storm surge to those areas that are perpendicular to the wind flow.
Let's talk about storm surge for a minute, because this is something that has been really on the mind of emergency people the last few days. Storm surge, first of all, just tell us what that means.
So in a simple description, it's pretty much just water piling up or being shoved on shore. So you have your normal sea level, but then of course you've got those winds that are on shore, and they're almost acting like a snow plow that's just pushing that ocean water or that bay water on shore. So the official forecast as of the earlier update from the National Hurricane Center is looking at about 5 to 10 feet, anywhere from the area of Tarpon Springs, including Tampa Bay, all the way south to Bonita Springs.
Now, you're using numbers like 5 to 10 feet, and I want to put that in perspective for people. Someone might not know much about storm surge and might think, oh, well, 5 feet of storm surge, I've been in a swimming pool in 5 feet of water. That's not a dangerous amount of water, but what's the difference then between standing water and storm surge, where the ocean is essentially 5 to 10 feet higher?
Well, if you've got moving floodwaters, that can easily, just a few inches or half a foot can wipe you off your feet. And we've got to think about the other hazards that this storm, is going to pose. We'll have major hurricane force winds right near the center of the eye wall. We'll have driving rain rates and the storm surge pushing ashore. So all of those factors combined, it's a life-threatening situation. You don't want to be out in it. You don't want to think, oh, I can take it and it'll be fine, because it's a combination of threats from this storm.
I want to remind people that they're listening to WMNF Tampa. I'm Sean Kinane. This is WMNF's Tuesday Cafe. We're speaking with Florida Public Radio Emergency Network meteorologist Megan Borowski, and we're talking about Hurricane Ian, expected to make landfall on Wednesday or Thursday, and very much either in the Tampa Bay area or just south of the Tampa Bay area is the projected landfall right now. When can we expect tropical storm strength winds?
That's a very good question. So earliest time of arrival could be the Tampa Bay area and St. Pete area as early as just after midnight tonight. Now, it's more likely than not it'll be closer to daybreak tomorrow morning that we'll start to have those tropical storm force winds. So just for reference, that's about 39 to 73 mile an hour winds. And of course, as time goes on tomorrow throughout the day, we'll see those winds becoming more sustained and increasing, especially as that eyeball in the center of the storm gets closer to our area.
What is the miles per hour of tropical storm force winds?
So yeah, tropical storm force winds, it'll range from 39 to 73 miles an hour. Once you get to that 74-mile-an-hour mark, that's hurricane force winds.
And I want to read something that just came to me right now. We just got an email from Manatee County, and Manatee County is writing, with the latest forecasts of Hurricane Ian showing what will be a significant impact along the Manatee County coastline, emergency management officials have expanded the mandatory evacuation order to include both level A and level B in Manatee County. Additionally, residents living in evacuation level C are encouraged to find shelter further inland. So here we knew that Manatee County was evacuating everyone in level A, but now they have expanded mandatory evacuations to include level B. What do you think prompted this, Megan?
Well, I know for a fact that emergency managers work closely with the National Weather Service office in Tampa, and then also the National Hurricane Center. So those personnel dialogue is going back and forth. They are briefing, NWS personnel are briefing the emergency managers on their latest updates. And also they have the latest data coming in as well from the National Hurricane Center. It's likely due to the expectation that the eyewall is going to track very close to Manatee County, and life-threatening and potentially unsurvivable storm surge and winds are possible at times.
So if you are in a level A or level B evacuation zone in Manatee County, you are under mandatory evacuations. You're listening to WMNF Tampa 88.5 FM. This is Tuesday Cafe. I'm Sean Kinane. I'm joined with Megan Borowski from the Florida Public Radio Emergency Network. She's a meteorologist there and has brought you storm coverage all this week and all throughout the storm season, of course. Just a few days ago, Hurricane Ian was a tropical storm, and before that, just an invest, or however they describe before it becomes a tropical storm. What's caused Ian to strengthen?
Well, we've not had a whole lot of activity especially in the Western Caribbean and the Eastern Gulf of Mexico, or really the Gulf of Mexico at all. So you kind of get the stratification of the sea surface. So you get those warmer waters pooling up, you get a deeper column of warm waters. And that serves as fuel for tropical cyclones. Or, hurricanes, tropical storms, they're all clusters of thunderstorms that organize, and thunderstorms feed off of moisture, warm water, instability in the atmosphere. So the deeper pool of warm water you have, the more energy that's available for the storm. As the storm sits over water, it helps, it churns the water. You have upwelling, and that'll bring cooler waters upward. If you've got a deep column of warm water, you're not going to get that cooler water toward the surface, and that's not going to detract from storm intensity. So that's one of the things. Also, the atmospheric winds. Right now, Ian is in an area that's very favorable. It'll keep those thunderstorms organized. As it does move northward, there is increasing wind shear in the higher latitudes, and that could help to shred it once it moves farther north. But it's going through an area where all the ingredients are in place, and that's why we're expecting it to continue strengthening before landfall.
And the anticipation is that it may be a Category 4 out there in the Gulf of Mexico before it hits landfall. And who knows, maybe weaken to a 3, or maybe not as it's hitting the southwest coast of Florida.
Yeah, we're going to see that the forecast probably change a little bit, but yeah, we are expecting at some point later today for it to become a Category 4, and then as of the latest NHC track, approach landfall as a Cat 3. But at that point, once you hit major hurricane status with those winds, right now it's near 130 miles an hour. If we get 5 to 10 mile an hour difference at that magnitude, it's still life threatening either way. So at this point, don't take the category as, oh, it's only a 3, it's not a 4 anymore, because it is still a dangerous storm.
We have a listener named Nick who writes in to say, if the storm crosses the state south of Tampa, St. Petersburg, that he suggests that there's a very high chance of tornadoes. So what can you say about the chance of tornadoes with Hurricane Ian?
So we're actually already seeing some tornadoes spawn over the Keys. We had a couple of warnings overnight. We had one warning this morning around 6:45 in the lower Keys. Traditionally, and with the dynamics of a tropical system, the way the rotation is, your best bet for the highest concentration of tornadoes is going to be in the right front quadrant. So if you look at the motion of the storm, that top right quadrant of the hurricane is where you'll be most likely to have tornadoes. There have been tornadoes observed in all the quadrants, but that's the one that you'll most likely get the highest concentration. So if we do have Ian hook to the right and the Tampa Bay area is to the left of the storm, there's a chance that your tornado risk will decrease. And actually there is a tornado watch in effect for South Florida, anywhere from Naples southward. So it hasn't really nudged into our area yet, but we are going to see those watches expand. I know that really the entire peninsula is under a level 3 out of 5 risk for tornadoes today. That continues to tomorrow, and then the risk shifts eastward toward the Space Coast.
Our guest is Florida Public Radio Emergency Network meteorologist Megan Borowski. You're listening to WMNF's Tuesday Cafe. I'm Sean Kinane. We're talking about Hurricane Ian. Maximum sustained winds of 125 miles an hour at the I believe it was the 10 o'clock
8 o'clock update. Yep.
The 8 o'clock update. Sorry about that. And there should be another update at 11. We might not get to that before the end of the show, but certainly watch for what the update is. And in fact, I should say that, we were talking about whether the storm might be hooking or turning a little bit to the right. And Governor DeSantis just had a press conference maybe a half an hour ago. And in that press conference, he was pointing out that he actually said that the landfall might be closer to Venice, and that the 11 o'clock update might reflect that. Do you know anything about where he got that information?
Right. So he's he's in contact with forecasters at the National Hurricane Center and emergency managers, and I'm sure they have a team of meteorologists at CERT in Tallahassee. And my guess is they are all seeing what we've been seeing in the Storm Center, and that's the Euro and the GFS. Those are the global models. They're hooking it to the right, and then there's a higher resolution model that is also hooking it to the right, closer to the Fort Myers area. And so I'm quite interested, and I'm really anticipating this 11 o'clock update. One, to see if winds have picked up and actually gotten a Category 4 strength, because pressure has continually dropped over the past 24 hours, and Ian continues to strengthen in that respect. So that's the first thing I'm looking for. And number two is we'll see if there's a shift in the cone to reflect more of what the models are showing now. And kind of what we opened the show with, it is quite interesting to see how the models have been trying to nail this down, and they're still trying to figure it out. Part of the reason I believe is there is a cold front that is stalled, or it's starting to stall over North Florida, and the dynamics of that interacting with the hurricane are likely influencing the fact that the models can't really nail it down yet.
One of the things that emergency managers were emphasizing yesterday is that this was still when the track was looking like it would pass parallel to Pinellas County, and the hurricane storm would slow down in its forward movement quite a lot. And people were concerned that slowdown would mean there would be lots and lots of rain. Well, I'm still looking at, even as the track has changed to the south, I guess, or to the east, there's still a lot of rain expected in the Tampa Bay area. I looked at the National Weather Service, and I think that it's 15 to 20 inches over most of Pinellas County and Hillsborough County. That's how much rain is expected this week. Yeah,
locally up to 20 inches could occur in some spots of the Tampa Bay metro area. Again, it's because there are dynamics of the front to our north. We've got a moisture pool just ahead of that front, right in the environment of Ian. So we've got, the thunderstorm activity, obviously, from Ian. We've got elevated lift thanks to that cold front. We've got a whole lot of moisture in the atmosphere, and that will likely trigger a massive amount of rainfall, quite frankly. We're looking at up to a foot anywhere from Tampa east, paralleling the I-4 corridor. And the latest model runs that I've been looking at show a good deal of the rain shield setting up on the west side of the track, closer to the vicinity of the front, where we have that increased atmospheric lift.
I have a question here that came in from Marguerite. She asks, after a storm, downed trees always lay in the same direction, and she assumes that's because of wind. She says, is there a way to predict which direction the trees will fall? And she asks because she's wondering which part of her house is most at risk from trees.
Right. So it's all going to depend on your orientation relative to the center of the storm. So if you look at a map and you see where you are, just keep in mind that basically winds will rotate counterclockwise around a tropical cyclone or any area of low pressure. That's going to be the predominant pattern of the wind flow. Now, of course, at the micro scale, you've got to incorporate atmospheric or friction for the surface of the earth and those sorts of things. But overall, just compare where you are relative to the center of the storm, and that should give you a good idea of lower level winds. Now, on top of the straight line wind risk from Ian, there is also the tornado risk, which we talked about. And with that, you're going to get sporadic debris fall. So it is not as easy to predict, what side of your house might be safer. I'd say in whichever case, go to the interior-most part of your house, away from windows.
And another thing to consider is that once the hurricane passes, then the direction of the wind will shift.
Exactly, right. So this is not oh, I'm just looking at where the storm is now compared to my house. It's something that you've got to be watching. If you are that concerned about large trees, falling on your house, I'd suggest if you are in the capacity to do so and conditions are still safe outside, get to a safer location, a storm shelter, where you know that you're not going to have to worry about those sorts of threats.
Our guest is Florida Public Radio Emergency Network meteorologist Megan Borowski, and you're listening to WMNF's Tuesday Cafe. I'm Sean Kinane. Maybe this would be, I have lots of other questions, Megan, but maybe this would be a good time for you just to explain what is the Florida Public Radio Emergency Network?
Yes, so we're a partnership among all the NPR stations across the state of Florida, and our particular service is we provide content about emergency disasters across the state and across the nation. And our team, we're based out of the University of Florida here in Gainesville, Florida. It's a safe, centralized location away from the coastline. That way we can provide storm ops throughout these situations. And we provide audio, digital, and TV content to all our NPR partners before an event, during an event, and after events to keep our audiences safe across the state.
And to our listeners, if you'd like to find information that is provided by FPREN to WMNF, you can go to wmnf.org/weather, and you can find all of their graphics and their information there. So I should ask, Megan, we've been talking about possible evacuations, and what's the key for when people should decide whether they should evacuate or not?
Well, I'd say first, listen to emergency managers. They go through extensive training seminars during the off season. They are continually on the best practices of when they issue those evacuation orders. But on even a smaller scale, you are the only one who knows your home and knows the needs of your family. So if you're in a situation, where you're living in a vulnerable area, your house, your home's vulnerabilities, it's up to you to make that call. And it's always better to be safe than sorry. It's always better to evacuate and keep your family safe than to make a rash decision and ride it out. Because there comes a point where when conditions, if they rapidly deteriorate, emergency officials won't be able to come and rescue you, and you'll be on your own. So evaluate your unique situation, understand your needs of your family and your property, and make decisions that way, but always heed advice from emergency managers.
And for example, the emergency managers in Manatee County during this show just said that they were requiring mandatory evacuations in zones A and now B as well. Where can someone find information about which evacuation zone they're in?
Well, on the Florida Storms app, if you download that, we do have a map that graphs, it actually points where you are, and then it tells you what evacuation zone you're in. Also, if you log on to floridadisaster.org, You can navigate to evacuation zones, and again, it'll geolocate you and tell you what location you're in, what evacuation zone you're in as well.
What would people take if they're evacuating? Let's say they're taking their pets and they're trying to find a shelter. What could they take, and how do they find information about shelters?
So all of that, as well as is located on floridadisaster.org. It's a one-stop shop for all that information. A couple of quick tips, things that I find are important to bring with you. All your important documents, you know, clothes that will get you through an extended stay away from home, medicines. If you have medications and prescriptions, please bring those with you. Food for your pets, pet food bowls. I know I've got a dog that I have to consider now for if I need to shelter in place. And if you're sheltering in place, food and water for at least 36 hours. But if you're going to a shelter, consider bringing dry goods. If you have children, toys and things to keep them occupied. You know, you're going to be inside for an extended period of time. But bare necessities, clothes-wise, and important documents and medications. Those are my big three.
I want to remind people that we're listening to Tuesday Cafe. I'm Sean Kinane. You're listening to WMNF Tampa. And the Florida Public Radio Emergency Network meteorologist Megan Borowski is our guest for the first half of this show. We have her on for a few more minutes. What can you tell us, Megan, then about what people, if there are people who are staying at home, they're staying put, they've decided things are going to be safer in my house than perhaps getting on the road, but what should they make sure that they have maybe in this last few hours of being able to gather supplies?
Have enough water for one gallon per person per day. Don't forget your pets. Dry goods, canned goods. Don't forget the can opener, or get the pop top cans. Battery powered flashlights. Avoid candles. Use flashlights. Have cash on hand for post storm, as the power might still be out. Means you might not be able to use your credit cards. Have your important documents and all important things in one location. So if you do have to leave, you can grab them quickly and get out. A battery powered or hand crank weather radio, so you can get alerts during the storm. And those are the main things that you need. But I strongly encourage, if an evacuation order is issued for your area, get out.
Yeah, and for people who do stay behind, it's not always just the storm that you have to be concerned about, because almost certainly we are expecting a loss of power, a widespread loss of power. 5 years ago, I forget what the storm was, but you know, I evacuated the area, and at my house the electricity was off for a week. So even if I had gone back, or even if I had stayed, it would have still been kind of a really different kind of way of living, without a refrigerator, without air conditioning. So you have to keep that in mind as well.
Exactly, 100%.
Well, before I let you go, what else is there that people should know about Hurricane Ian, and whether, you know, just all the various things, where it might head and what you should be preparing for?
Well, yeah, this storm so far has been very hard to nail down, and in terms of the forecast track. Now, the last NHC track that has been issued, the center of that cone takes the storm through the Tampa Bay area, but that cone shows you where the center of the storm could track. So anywhere in that cone, the center of the storm could be located. It'll be interesting to see what happens at 11 o'clock with the update. Models are trending farther south for landfall, and that could occur earlier on Wednesday. So, this is not set in stone, this forecast. Hazards are still the same. You want to be preparing for storm surge flooding, heavy rainfall, damaging, life-threatening winds, all of those hazards. But I urge areas south of Tampa, closer to Fort Myers, closer to Sarasota, keep an eye on this forecast, because you are not out of the woods yet. And then on top of that, we do have that tornado risk that is going to increase today and tomorrow across much of the peninsula. So multiple hazards going on. Please have a way to get weather alerts, heed emergency managers, heed those weather watches and warnings, and take shelter if a warning is issued for your area.
Well, thank you so much for coming on WMNF Tuesday Cafe, Megan.
Thanks, Sean, for having me.
I really appreciate you coming on. Megan Borowski is a meteorologist with the Florida Public Radio Emergency Network.